Chapter 3: The Seven Interpretations of Symbolic Prophecy. The symbolic prophecies of Daniel and John contain 7 divinely given interpretations of their meaning. These interpretations claim our first attention and constitute the only infallible basis of exposition. In building on them, we build not on the shifting sands of human opinion, but on the stable rock of revealed truth. Without such a foundation, no interpretation of Daniel and the Apocalypse can be secure and trustworthy, as resting upon divine authority, but can only stand on begged principles and mere human conjectures. The 7 divinely given interpretations are the following. 1. The interpretation of the vision of the great image in Daniel 2. 5 verses contain the description of the image, stone, and mountain, verses 31 through 35, followed by 10 verses giving the interpretation, verses 36 through 45. Mark the introductory words, "This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king," and the concluding words, "The dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure." We do well to underline in our Bibles the word interpretation, that we may note and remember the important fact that we are furnished here in the prophecy with an infallible guide to its meaning. The interpretation of the vision of the image given to Daniel in answer to prayer by the God of heaven and conveyed by Daniel to Nebuchadnezzar is as follows. 1. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the heaven, hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. 2. And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee. 3. And another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. 4. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, forasmuch as iron breaketh in pieces, and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces, and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay, and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, forasmuch as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron, and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong, and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. 5. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Forasmuch as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it brake in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure. In this divinely given interpretation, the 4 different metallic parts of the image represent 4 successive kingdoms, of which the first is that of Babylon, while the stone cut out without hands, which destroys the image, becomes a mountain and fills the earth, represents the kingdom of the God of heaven, universal in its range and everlasting in its duration. Let us mark these 5 kingdoms in our Bibles by the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and write opposite the words, "Thou art this head of gold," the name of Babylon, and opposite the 5th kingdom the words "Kingdom of God." Let us note that the 4 kingdoms follow each other without any gap, as represented by the 4 parts of a single image, that the second is inferior to the first, that the third is characterized by worldwide extent, and the fourth by resistless strength and all-subduing conquests. Observe especially that the 4th kingdom is in its later stage divided, that it consists partly of iron and partly of clay, and that the attempts to reunite its broken fragments prove vain and futile. Contrast the great colossus of human sovereignty, standing on feeble, broken feet of iron mixed with clay, with the stable and everlasting mountain of the kingdom of God. Observe the superhuman origins of the final kingdom, represented by a stone cut without hands, a kingdom founded by no sword or scepter of man, built by no human will or wisdom, but by the invisible power of the Creator of heaven and earth. Note also the two stages of the kingdom, represented by the stone and the mountain, and that before the stone becomes the mountain, it falls on the feet of the image, or on the image in its finally divided clay and iron state, and utterly annihilates it. The first and last of the 5 kingdoms in the vision are clearly and authoritatively interpreted as the kingdom of Babylon and the kingdom of the God of heaven, while the second, third, and fourth are the intervening kingdoms which fill up the course of Gentile rule between these two well-marked termini. Later visions plainly show what these intervening kingdoms are. 2. The interpretation of the vision of the great tree in Daniel 4. Nebuchadnezzar, who had heard from Daniel the interpretation of the great image, now asked the prophet to tell him the interpretation of the great tree. "Tell me the visions of my dream and the interpretation thereof." The king then recounts his dream, the narrative occupying 9 verses, while Daniel's interpretation fills the 9 verses which follow, verses 19 through 27. Observe the words, "This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High." Nebuchadnezzar had seen in his dream a great tree reaching to heaven, under whose shadow dwelt the birds and beasts of the earth. He had heard a voice from heaven proclaim the decree, "Hew down the tree, but leave the stump of his roots in the earth, and let 7 times pass over him." Daniel thus interprets the meaning, "It is thou, O king," verse 22. As in the former vision, Daniel had said to Nebuchadnezzar, "Thou art this head of gold," so here he boldly tells the monarch that the vision concerns himself. He, Nebuchadnezzar, was symbolized by the great tree, his far-reaching dominion by its widely extending branches, and his temporary abasement during the period of 7 times was represented by the cutting down of the tree, whose stump was left bound with iron and brass in the soil during this predicted period. "They shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and 7 times shall pass over thee, till thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will." The rest of the chapter relates the historical fulfillment of the vision. All this came upon the king Nebuchadnezzar. The 7 times of the monarch's debasement typify the 7 times of the long degradation of worldly power under the wild beast empires of the later prophecy in chapter 7. The same empires which had been represented by the bright and terrible image are here depicted by savage beasts of prey, whose dominion, strictly limited by the decree of heaven to the revealed times and seasons of the prophecy, continues till the manifestation of the kingdom of the Son of Man. 3. The interpretation of the handwriting on the wall of Belshazzar's palace in Daniel 5. At Belshazzar's feast, the golden vessels from the temple at Jerusalem were profaned by being used for the worship of gods of gold and of silver, of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. It was the culmination of the sin of Babylon. Silently her doom was written. In the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand, and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Moved by curiosity and consternation, the king asked the astrologers to interpret the mysterious words upon the wall, but none of them can do it. At the queen's suggestion, he sends for Daniel. The aged prophet stands in the presence of the idolatrous monarch, and while refusing his proffered gifts, says, "I will read the writing unto the king, and make known to him the interpretation. This is the writing that was written. Mene, tekel, upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God hath numbered thy kingdom, and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances, and art found wanting. Peres, thy kingdom is divided, and given to the Medes and the Persians." History, both sacred and profane, records the fulfillment of the prophecy. In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. The kingdom of Babylon, proud, sensual, and idolatrous, fell before the Medo Persian power. In the interpretation of the word Perez, the prophet Daniel plainly indicates the name of the second of the four kingdoms, that of the Medes and the Persians. Thus, the silver breast and arms of the great image are interpreted. As the first of the four kingdoms is Babylon, so the second is Persia. In accepting this interpretation, we build on plain statements in the Word of God, confirmed by the witness of history. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Daniel, Herodotus, Xenophon, and the canon of Ptolemy all combine to prove the distinctness of the Babylonian and Medo Persian kingdoms, and that the second of these conquered and succeeded the first. 4. The interpretation of the ram and he-goat in Daniel 8. We place this interpretation before that of chapter 7, as it gives us the name of the third empire. The Persian power is represented in this vision by a ram, while the power which destroyed and succeeded it is depicted by a he-goat. The ram has two horns and is thus interpreted. The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. The he-goat that came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground, which had a notable horn between his eyes, and which smote the ram and brake his two horns, and cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, is thus interpreted. The rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now that being broken, whereas four stood up for it, four kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. Chapter 8, verses 21 and 22. Exactly the same succession of historic events is again plainly foretold in Daniel chapter 11, verses 2 and 4. In the first year of Darius the Mede, the revealing angel says to Daniel, Now I will show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the fourth shall be far richer than they all, and by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. And a mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion, and do according to his will. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, and shall be divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, and not to his posterity, nor according to his dominion which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside those. The 3 Persian kings who followed Cyrus were Cambyses, Smerdis, and Darius Hystaspes, while the fourth was Xerxes, who, far richer than his predecessors, invaded Greece, and by his defeat brought about the crisis of Persian decay. The mighty, world-conquering king who overthrew the power of Persia was Alexander the Great of Macedon, and the fourfold division of his kingdom in the prophecy answers to the course of history. Prophecy and history agree in determining the Grecian Empire to be the third in the succession of kingdoms beginning with that of Babylon. 5. The interpretation of the 4 wild beast kingdoms and of the kingdom of the Son of Man in Daniel 7. The 4 kingdoms of the image, followed by the kingdom of the mountain which fills the earth, representing the universal and everlasting kingdom of God, are shown under a different set of symbols in Daniel 7, with additional features. The 4 great empires of earth appear under strangely contrasted symbols to the king and to the prophet. In the former case, a worldly idolater looked up and beheld a great fourfold image of earthly dominion. It was terrible, yet attractive to him in its brilliancy. In the latter case, a man of God looked down and beheld 4 great beasts, terrible only in their fierce brutality. The identity of the 4 kingdoms in Daniel 2 and 7 is evident. The number is the same, 4 in each. The starting point is the same, for each was given while Babylon was the ruling power. Daniel chapter 2 verse 1 and chapter 7 verse 1. The issue is the same, for both are immediately followed by the kingdom of Christ. The order is the same, for the kingdoms in the first vision, as all admit, are successive. In the other, there are no less than 7 or 8 clauses which denote succession in time. There is the same gradation, for the noblest metal and the noblest animal take the lead in each series. Further, the kingdoms in each vision are described as occupying the whole space till the dominion of the saints of God. The first empire is that of Babylon. For to the king of Babylon it was said, "Thou art this head of gold." If we require the names of the two next kingdoms, the angel Gabriel continues the message of the prophet. The ram having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. The rough goat is the king of Grecia. If we ask the name and character of the fourth empire, the evangelist supplies the answer. There went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. If we let him alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and nation. Four supreme and ruling kingdoms, and four only, are announced by name in the Word of God, from the time of Daniel to the close of the sacred canon. The narrative of the vision of the four wild beast empires and the kingdom of the Son of Man in Daniel 7 occupies the first 14 verses, while the interpretation follows in verses 16 through 27. Note the words, "So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the things." First, a general interpretation is given of the four wild beast powers and of the kingdom of the saints of the Most High, verses 17 and 18, and then a more detailed interpretation of the fourth kingdom. The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. Here, as in the symbol of the great image, a tenfold division of the fourth or Roman Empire is predicted. The kingdom shall be divided. As the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. Daniel chapter 2, verses 41 and 42. In the later vision, this tenfold division is represented by the 10 horns of the fourth wild beast. Among these rises another little horn, with eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things, which horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them for a definite period. They shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Verses 25 through 27. 6. The interpretation of the seven stars and the seven candlesticks in Revelation chapter 1. The interpreter here is none other than our Lord Himself. The mystery of the seven stars which thou sawest in my right hand, and the seven golden candlesticks. The seven stars are the angels of the seven churches, and the seven candlesticks which thou sawest are the seven churches. Revelation chapter 1, verse 20. This divinely given interpretation assigns a Christian character to the prophecy in which it occurs, for it interprets the candlesticks as Christian churches, and the introductory portion of the book in which these are presented is so intimately and profoundly connected with the subsequent prophecy in chapters 6 through 22 as to impart to the latter a Christian character, or to justify the view that it is a prophecy of the history and destiny of the Christian church. This intimate connection is seen in the fact that the promises in the letters to the seven churches relate to experiences and privileges set forth and the predictions which occur in the prophetic portion of the book. 1. The promise in the letter to the church of Ephesus, "To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God," relates to a blessing foretold in chapter 22 in the course of the prophecy, where the scene is described in which the tree of life occupies a central place. The Christian character which certainly attaches to the promise must therefore also attach to the prophecy, for the thing promised and the thing prophesied are the same. 2. The promise in the letter to the church of Smyrna, "He that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death." relates to that final stage of salvation described in detail in chapters 20 and 21. Both promise and prophesy further to the experiences of those who escape the same final judgment. 3. The promise in the letter to the church of Pergamos. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name written, which no man knoweth, saving he which receiveth it. Is in one of its features analogous with the prophecy of the 144,000 redeemed from the earth, who have the Father's name written in their foreheads, and also with the prophecy in chapter 22 concerning the inhabitants of the New Jerusalem. They shall see his face, and his name shall be in their foreheads. The thing promised and the thing prophesied are the bestowment on his redeemed people of a divine name in a written form by the hand of the Redeemer. 4. The promise in the letter to the church of Thyatira is, he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. And chapter 12 is a prophecy concerning a man child who is to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And in chapter 19, Christ himself is seen in vision exercising this power. The ruling the nations with a rod of iron referred to in these cases must be the same, as the promise of ruling the nations with a rod of iron is addressed to Christian people. The act of ruling the nations with a rod of iron described in the prophecy must be something in which Christian people take part. 5. The promise in the letter to the church of Sardis is, he that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in white raiment, and I will not blot out his name out of the book of life. And chapter 7 is a prophecy concerning an innumerable multitude of all nations, peoples, and tongues, clothed in white robes, washed in the blood of the Lamb. In chapter 19, the bride of the Lamb is seen arrayed in fine linen, which is the righteousness of saints. And in chapter 21, the names of the inhabitants of the New Jerusalem are said to be written in the Lamb's book of life. Here again, the blessings promised in the earlier part of the book are identical with the privileges prophetically foretold in its later pages. 6. The promise in the letter to the church of Philadelphia is, him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out. And I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my God, and I will write upon him my new name. This is unquestionably a Christian promise relating to Christian experiences. Hence, the prophecy in chapter 21 of the New Jerusalem descending out of heaven from God, having in its foundation the names of the apostles of the Lamb, must be a Christian prophecy or relate to things concerning the Christian church. This link is clear and important. 7. The promise in the letter to the church of Laodicea is, to him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me on my throne. In the closing part of the prophecy, chapters 20 through 22, the victorious saints are seen reigning with Christ. I saw thrones, and they that sat upon them, and they lived and reigned with Christ. The reward promised to Christian victors, the reigning with Christ, is identical with the reward of the victors over the wild beast power described in the prophecy. Promise and prophecy relate to the same exalted experiences and describe the same ultimate reward. The conclusion to which we are led, that the prophecy, chapters 6 through 22, is a Christian prophecy or relates to the experiences of the Christian church, is strongly confirmed by the description of its witnessing and suffering saints as those who overcame by the blood of the Lamb, who have the testimony of Jesus Christ, chapter 12, verses 11 and 17, who keep the faith of Jesus, chapter 14, verse 12, and are the martyrs of Jesus, chapter 17, verse 6, slain for the witness of Jesus, chapter 20, verse 4. Who can those be who have the testimony of Jesus, who keep the faith of Jesus, and are the martyrs of Jesus, but Christian people? But these are the saints, the sufferers, and the victors of the prophetic portion of the book. On all these grounds, the conclusion is inevitable that the apocalypse is a Christian prophecy, or, in other words, that it relates to the experiences of the Christian church in its militant and triumphant stages. 7. The interpretation of the woman, Babylon the Great, and of the seven-headed, ten-horned beast. that carrieth her. Of all the visions in the prophetic part of the Apocalypse, chapters 6 through 22, that of Babylon and the beast in chapter 17 is the only one divinely interpreted. Through the interpretation of the vision, a door is open to the understanding of the rest of the visions in the prophecy. The vision of Babylon the Great, which is continued in chapter 18, is one of the most striking and important in the book. It is one of two contrasted visions in the closing part of the Apocalypse, that of the harlot city Babylon and that of the New Jerusalem, the bride of the Lamb. In each case, the vision is shown to John by one of the seven vial bearing angels. In each, the object seen is doubly symbolized as a woman in a city. The harlot city is arrayed in purple and scarlet color and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, while the bride, the New Jerusalem, is arrayed in fine linen, clean and white, which is the righteousness of saints, and has the glory of God. The one is the associate of the beast, with the Greek word meaning beast, the other of the lamb, with the Greek word meaning lamb. The one is drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. The other consists of the saints and includes the martyrs. The one is punished with both temporal and eternal judgments. The other is rewarded with everlasting honor and felicity. The contrast between them is complete. Contrasted visions of Babylon and Jerusalem, the harlot and the bride, the whore that sitteth upon many waters, against the bride, the Lamb's wife, Babylon the great against the holy Jerusalem. There came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Against There came unto me one of the seven angels which had the seven vials full of the seven last plagues, and talked with me, saying, Come hither, I will show thee the bride, the Lamb's wife. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And he carried me away in the spirit to a great and high mountain, and showed me the bride, the Lamb's wife, under another symbol. Revelation 21, verses 9 and 10. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Against To her was granted that she should be arrayed in fine linen, clean and white, for the fine linen is the righteousness of saints. Revelation 19, verse 8. This bride described as the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, having the glory of God, and her light like unto a stone most precious. Revelation 21, verses 10 and 11. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. Against The dragon persecuted the woman, and the dragon was wroth with the woman. Interpretation of the vision. Of Babylon the Great, the apostle says, When I saw her, I wondered with a great wonder. Revelation chapter 17, verse 6. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou wonder? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and the 10 horns. Verses 8 through 18 contain the interpretation, which is clear, copious, and categorical. 5 principal points are dealt with in the explanation under the expressions the beast that thou sawest, verse 8, the 7 heads, verse 9, the 10 horns which thou sawest, verse 12, the waters which thou sawest, verse 15, the woman which thou sawest, verse 18. Every point interpreted fixes the application of the vision to Rome. 1. The woman is interpreted as signifying the city of Rome. The woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. At the date when the apocalypse was written, Rome governed the world. 2. The city is represented as sitting on 7 hills. This is a well known feature of the city of Rome. All the Latin poets for 500 years speak of Rome as the seven-hilled city. Rome is depicted on her imperial coins as sitting on seven hills. Among the early fathers, Tertullian and Jerome may be cited as referring to this feature. I appeal, says Tertullian, to the citizens of Rome, the populace that dwell on the seven hills. Jerome, when urging Marcella to quit Rome for Bethlehem, writes, "Read what is said in the Apocalypse of the seven hills." The names of the seven hills of Rome are the Palatine, Quirinal, Aventine, Caelan, Viminal, Esquiline, and Janiculum. 3. The harlot city is represented as seated upon many waters, Revelation 17, verse 1, which are interpreted to mean peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues, verse 15. Such was certainly the position of Rome. The nations of the world were then, and for centuries after, subject to her sway. 4. The harlot city is represented as seated upon the seven-headed, ten-horned beast. And the prophecies of Daniel, the ten-horned wild beast is the fourth Gentile empire, or the Roman. No city ruled the Roman Empire but Rome. 5. The sixth head of the wild beast power, which carried the harlot, is stated to have been in existence at the time when the apocalypse was written. Of the seven heads of the wild beast, the angel says five are fallen, and one is, and the other is not yet come. These seven heads are interpreted to be ruling powers. Five of these were past, the sixth in existence, the seventh in the future. Hence, the wild beast, under its sixth head, represented the Roman Empire as governed by the then existing Roman emperors, and consequently, the harlot city born by that beast must have represented Rome itself. 6. The ten horns are interpreted as 10 kingdoms, then future, into which the empire should be divided. These horns or kingdoms first submit to the harlot city, and then rise against her, and make her desolate and naked, and eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. Their futurity at that early date is indicated in the words, "They have received no kingdom as yet." Verse 12. It is a notorious matter of history that the Western Roman Empire was thus divided into the Gothic kingdoms, whose average number has been 10 for the last 12 or 13 centuries, and that these Gothic kingdoms have overthrown the city of Rome and laid it waste, after having been subject to it for centuries as the city of the popes. 7. The attire, character, and persecuting action of the harlot city identify her with Rome. The view that the Babylon of the Apocalypse represents Rome has prevailed in the Christian church, both Eastern and Western, from earliest times. "Tell me, blessed John," says Hippolytus, "what didst thou see and hear concerning Babylon? Arise and speak, for it sent thee also into banishment." Victorinus, the author of the earliest known commentary on the Apocalypse, says, "The seven heads are the seven hills on which the woman sitteth, that is, the city of Rome." Augustine writes of Rome, the second Babylon, and the daughter of the first, for which it pleased God to subject the whole world and bring it all under one sovereignty. Protestant interpreters maintain, while Roman Catholic interpreters admit, that the Babylon of the Apocalypse is Rome. Cardinal Bellarmine says Rome is signified in the Apocalypse by the name of Babylon. Cardinal Baronius says all persons confess that Rome is denoted by the name Babylon in the Apocalypse of John. Bossuet declares that the features are so marked that it is easy to decipher Rome under the figure of Babylon. Rome sous la figure de Babylon. While Romanists and Protestants are agreed that the Babylon of the Apocalypse is Rome, the former maintain that Babylon represents Rome pagan, the latter Rome papal. "I do not hesitate," says Dean Alford, "to maintain that interpretation which regards papal and not pagan Rome is pointed out by the harlot of this vision." The subject has been amply discussed by many expositors. I would especially mention Vitringa and Dr. Wordsworth. By the woman sitting on the wild beast is signified that superintending and guiding power which the writer possesses over his beast, than which nothing could be chosen more apt to represent the superiority claimed and exercised by the See of Rome over the secular kingdoms of Christendom. The prophecy regards Rome pagan and papal, but from the figure of a harlot and the very nature of the predictions themselves more the latter than the former. On this important point, Bishop Wordsworth says, "The woman who is called the harlot sits on the beast as on a throne, that is, governs it and is supported by it. The beast is represented as having 10 horns bearing crowns, which, we are taught, are 10 kingdoms, and these, it is added, had not received power in St. John's age, but were afterwards to receive it at 1 hour, that is, at one and the same hour with the beast." Now, if we imagine the woman on the beast to be heathen and not Christian Rome, where were these 10 kingdoms, which had not existed in St. John's age, and which were to arise and receive power contemporaneously with heathen Rome? It was destroyed before such kingdoms arose. None can be found to correspond to St. John's description. But now adopt again the other supposition. Let the beast with the woman enthroned upon it represent a church. Let it represent the church planted on the 7 hills on which the woman sits. Let it represent the Church of Rome. Then all is plain. The prophecy is wonderfully fulfilled and is proved to be divine. When the empire of Rome fell, new kingdoms arose from its ruins. The 10 horns of the beast sprouted up. Then the Church of Rome increased in strength, and these kingdoms received power at the same time with her. And look again at the prophecy. These kings, we read, give their power and strength to the beast. As kings, that is, they are called kings, but the beast is the real sovereign of their subjects. What is the fact? The European kingdoms which arose at the dissolution of the Roman Empire did surrender themselves to the dominion of the Church of Rome. Italy, Switzerland, Germany, Poland, Hungary, France, Belgium, Spain, Portugal, and our own England for many centuries were subject to the papacy. The woman who sat upon the beast had her hand upon its 10 horns, and held them firmly in her grasp. She treated them as her subjects. The papal coins claim this. Omnis regis serviente ea, gens et regnum, quod tibi non severit perlibit. Such are her claims, declared at the coronation of every pontiff. Know thyself the father of kings and princes, ruler of the world. These are the words with which he is addressed when the tiara is placed on his brow. And thus, in this very subjection of the kingdoms of the earth to Rome, in this her amplitude of dominion and plenitude of felicity, of which she has vaunted herself for many generations as a proof that she is favored by heaven, we recognize another proof that the Babylon of the Apocalypse is no other than the Church of Rome. Still further, these horns, or kingdoms, which receive power together with the beast, will one day rise against it and tear the flesh of the harlot and burn her with fire. Now again, for argument's sake, let the woman on the beast be heathen Rome. Then we readily allow that Alaric with his Goths, Attila with his Huns, Genseric with his Vandals, Odoacer with his Heruli, did indeed sack the city of Rome. But when did they ever receive power together with Rome? When did they give their power and their strength to heathen Rome? Never. If therefore the woman upon the beast is only the city of pagan Rome, then the prophecy of St. John has failed. But the marvel predicted by the Apocalypse is this, and a stupendous mystery it is, that some of the powers which received strength with the beast and gave up their might to it, they, under the overruling sway of God's retributive justice, will one day rise against the woman seated on the beast, and tear her flesh, and burn her with fire. And what is still more awfully marvelous, they will do this, although they will league with the beast and with the false prophet against Christ, and they will destroy Babylon, not for love of Zion, not for the maintenance of God's truth, or for the advancement of his glory, but in a mysterious transport of indignation and in a wild ecstasy of revenge. And when they have done the deed and have destroyed Babylon, they will weep over her. Such is the prophecy of St. John. This portion of it remains to be fulfilled, but pagan Rome has long since ceased to be. Therefore, these predictions cannot concern pagan Rome, but they do concern the 7 hilled city Rome, and therefore they point at papal Rome. And the woman upon the beast is not heathen Rome, but it is the city and the church of papal Rome. A fuller examination of the facts of history is necessary at this point. We have merely glanced at some of them, and even now can do no more than group together the leading facts connected with the historical fulfillment of the prophecy.